Now we'll continue with our first World Championship preview show by discussing the PDPA Tour Card Holder Qualifier, which was on Monday afternoon as Richie Burnett got through to his first World Championship in 9 years, and he was joined by Ryan Joyce, who was the first man out in the Pro Tour Order of Merit, as well as joined by Jeff Smith from Canada. What was your reaction for those three players and any others that you care to speak about from Monday's action?
This was a big day, wasn't it? Probably one of the most important days of non-televised starts that we have in the PDC, because as we've seen players, the last 3 spots in the World Championship were decided today. But for players that missed out on those 3 spots, of course, it does mean that for some of them, they have lost their tour cards, and some of them, of course, they'll go back to Q School at the start of next year and try and win them. And for some of them, we know that will probably be the end of the road as far as them playing on the PDC main tour. And one of those, of course, is Glenn Durran, 3-time BDO World Champion, Premier League champion, and someone that we've seen over the last few years that their game has dropped off from such huge heights that he had when he first joined the PDC. But he has come out today after he lost out in the qualifier and said that that's him as a professional player. He's going to move on to other things, but we will still see him play. We'll still see him involved in darts, which is great. And other players that we probably will see go back to Q School, Scott Mitchell, another former world champion, John Henderson, who only last year won that World Cup with Peter Wright for Scotland, Mr. Pure Darts, William Borland, who at last year's World Championship hit that 9-darter to win the game, completed darts. He's going to have to go back to Q School to try and get that tour card. And a few others who have been on the tour a bit longer, Jeffrey Desvan, Max Hopp, Steve West, so players that have been household names in recent years. They've got to go back to Q School to get their tour cards. But as far as the players that were able to get through that qualifier today and get the spots at Ali Pali, and I guess for the 3 of them, it is different things in their career, really. Ryan Joyce, he's got no concerns about losing his tour card. Richie Burnett, it's his first year with his new tour card, and pleased for him because we had him on the show earlier on in the year, and he said one of his big goals over these next 2 years, he was calling it his last dance in darts, is to get to Ali Pali, and he's done it in his first year. So yeah, for selfish reasons, I'm hoping that he is going to be playing on that opening night when I'm going to be there as a fan, so I get to see him play. And some great performances that he had today as well, a 95 average in his first round game, and almost 109.98 in that game against Brian Rahman in the penultimate round. Brian Rahman averaging 104.75. It feels very unlucky, I'm imagining, for him not to win through that qualifier, and then coming through in the last round against Dave Evans. And probably out of the 3 players that have come through, you've got to say for Jeff Smith, it is the most important as far as where his career is at the moment, because if he hadn't have won through that qualifier, he would have been on that list of players that I started this answer with that would have had to go back to Q School to get their tour card. And getting through the qualifier today, I think it's put him up to 63rd on that provisional order of merit after the World Championship. So probably got to win one more game, or it's going to be a bit touch and go if he does stay in that top 64. But he had some great battles today. I mean, he was 5-3 down in his first round game against Jack Main, survived match darts and won that one. Another 6-5 win against Steve Lennon, a 103 checkout in the decider, and then in his last game, a 7-1 win against Nick Fulwell. So he's had some good games in there, some battles. And you think of Jeff Smith the last few years as well, that the battles that he's had off the oche with all the restrictions during the virus, all the hours of travelling, the hurdles that he's had to overcome. It'd be great for him if he could get another year on tour as the restrictions are continuing to ease, and hopefully we'll see his best stuff next year. But he's got himself a chance.
Yeah, mostly going to say much the same as you did there. A lot of names that now will be going back to Q School. You didn't mention a couple that probably will because they're still in the top 64, but didn't qualify. Joe Mernon nearly went out his first match, was 5-1 down or 5-2 down and came back and won it, but ended up going out in the last 24. Likely going to be back to Q School for him, a former winner on tour, which won a title when he didn't have a tour card. Ron Muhlenkamp, currently the last person in. He's been on tour for a few years now. I think he's made more semifinals than any player who's never made a PDC ranking final. Likely back to Q School now, as he's the last person in, and it's currently 64th. But Keegan Brown, Neil Zonneveld, Jim Williams, all they need is one win. A few other players need 2 wins to pass him. And then all those players who you mentioned, I'll also add in Andy Bolton, who's been on tour for a while now, and Jason Lowe, who really looked a very good player his first year on tour, but just hasn't met those same heights the last couple of years. Snuck into the World Championship as an alternate last year, didn't make it this year. Back to Q School for him. As far as though the three players who managed to win through and get to the World Championships, you did say that Ryan Joyce didn't have to worry about his tour card, and that's right. But he probably would have had to worry about his tour card next year because he didn't do that much this year. He only won the 24,000 pounds on the Pro Tour. Obviously, a good weekend in the Players' Championship finals, making it through to the last 16 is going to help. Also run at the UK Open. So, he was still going to carry some money over, but not nearly what he did last year. Not nearly what he'd done in previous years when he was closing in on the top 32. Now he's just in the mid 40s, getting to the World Championships. Even if he loses that first match, because as we talked about earlier, he has a brutal draw, just getting that extra 7,500 pounds could be very vital in 12 months to make sure he stays on tour. Obviously, after the last few years, his goal is to do a lot more than just stay on tour. It's to get back into the major championships, but getting to the World Championship is a huge first step for that. As far as Jeff Smith, you mentioned this gives him a chance to save his tour card. I said on the last time we recorded, I said a few times this year that it's been a difficult couple of years because of COVID for Jeff Smith, more so than almost any other player because of how far he's had to travel. And I think that took its toll. I think he's a better player than just struggling to get through the PDPA tour card qualifier to stay on tour. He is a top 64 player, maybe even a top 48 player when he's being able to play the full schedule without the inconvenience of global pandemic restrictions affecting his travel. I think if he's able to get that win and stay on tour, we'll see him stay there for a few years because he's a good player. And getting through, I think, is obviously huge because it gives him that chance. It's in his hands now to save his tour card. And you mentioned Richie Burnett, definitely the most surprising of the three. He had been one of the lowest players in terms of money won this year of anyone on tour before this, but it's not one of the lowest, but on the lower end, and that's why he was at the PDPA qualifier. But dominant performance, averaged nearly 115 for most of his semifinal. A bad last leg led that drop to 109.99, but still the performance of the day. And then was well up in the final. Let his opponent get a little bit back into it, but just really I was going to say roll back the year's performance, but I don't remember him averaging 110 before. Just a fantastic performance that I don't think anyone, probably not even he, saw coming. And that's why he's now in the field and giving himself something to build on for next year because, well, next year is when he's going to have to do better to save his tour card.